So, I believe it's time to start. Do we have any only English-speaking people here? Hands up. Okay, then we'll do this in English. If you leave, we'll switch to Swedish. So don't leave. I would like to welcome you all to this security seminar. Everything we say will be used against us, or at least it will be recorded. It will also be live fed out. When we have the questions afterwards, please use the microphones and present yourself with full name. This is for the documentation and for all the people who are not so lucky to be here in person. After this, there will also be a workshop tomorrow, and those of you who want to attend should register with the PTS beforehand. We're going to have 3 speaking sessions. First, Eva Ekenberg from PTS, and as her sidekick, Lars-Johan Liman. After that, Einar Lönn will talk about the DNSCheck, and as the Bond final, Ann-Marie Eklund Löwinder will talk about how the Swedish internet is faring on a technical level. My plan is that we have all the questions afterwards, and I've instructed this young man here in the white shirt that if you raise your hand and make a scribbling sign like this, he will rush out to you with a paper so you can write down all your interesting, intelligent questions, and we can take them afterwards in a good and organized fashion. My name is Tomas Gilså, and I'm very happy to see you all here. And I would like to give the word to Eva.
Yes, and I will give you a short introduction to the exercise Telö 09. And after me, one of the participants will present how it was to be a part of the exercise. The exercise Telö 09 was carried out during 2 days in May this year. The overall aim with Telö 09 was to strengthen the sector's ability to handle serious and extensive interruption and disturbances in the networks for electronic communication. Why organize an exercise in the electronic communication sector? First of all, it was a joint decision of the exercise Telö 07. Every organization involved in the exercise 2007 almost require additional exercises. Another reason to organize an exercise is that good collaboration between the actors in crisis situation can only be accomplished by practice. During crisis, it is probably too late to establish collaboration between the operators in the sector. Each company in the sector should and can handle threats up to a certain level. But above this level, collaboration is a necessity. Telö 09 was a crisis management exercise, and it is so far the largest crisis management exercise for the sector. The total number of stakeholders were 18, and total number of persons involved were about 400. And it was also a learning exercise. Each involved stakeholder did their own evaluations. The exercise was distributed. This means that the participant stakeholders were based at their respective ordinary workplaces or their backup locations. So the participants were placed during the exercise in 27 different locations around Sweden. And the exercise was guided by an exercise control located in Stockholm. And to coordinate the exercise, a local exercise controller was placed at every location that the participant stakeholders were based. And the central opponents consist of approximately 60 persons or people located both in Stockholm and Gothenburg. The scenario for the exercise was created around a terrorist topic. The events in the scenario affected the electronic communications networks and other parts of the society, which imposes great challenge on those participated in the exercise. The scenario was designed so that collaboration between telecom operators should be necessary, as well as collaboration between operators and public authorities. An exercise needs some tools to simulate the real world. Participated in the exercise must be informed about what is happening according to the scenario. The participants used ordinary communication as far as possible, such as email, telephone, websites, and so on. But the major tool for the Telö 09 exercise was a web-based information platform. And during the whole exercise, the Swedish radio produced news reports from the exercise and broadcast them over the web. An important part of an exercise is to evaluate and draw conclusions. Telö 09 was evaluated based on 4 different aspects. Above that, each participant stakeholder did their own local evaluation, and their results are handled by each operator itself. The reason for this is that otherwise no one would like to attend to these kind of exercises. But each participant player is free to talk about their own evaluation and conclusions. And one of those who attended will soon share their experience. New with Telö 09 was that some internet actors participated. Something that, for example, required that the scenario also consists of events affected those actors. And now we will hear if it succeeded or not.
Thank you. My name is Lars-Johan Liman. I work for NetNode, the Swedish Internet Exchange Systems. I'll just do that was the wrong one. Let's go here and let's go there. Why are you behind? There you go. NetNode is part of the Swedish infrastructure on the internet side, but it's a private entity. So we operate exchange points in 5 major cities in Sweden. We provide central infrastructure services for the internet, for instance, domain name servers for top-level domains. We provide time servers for synchronizing computer time settings. We provide routing registries so that the internet service providers know how to send their traffic, and also we under a contract we run the measurement reference servers for the network measurements produced by the Internet Infrastructure Foundation. And we're established in Stockholm, Gothenburg, Malmö, Sundsvall, and Luleå. So what did we do in Telö 09? We were invited by the board for Post and Telecommunication to participate as one of the internet players, and I was what the English term is, the local conductor at NetNode conducting the exercise. If we look at the very high-level results, what we find was that the technology is not what bites you. The players, your staff, deal with technology all the time. That's what they do for their living. So they actually understand what the problems are. They understand how to deal with them, and they have a good understanding of what the effects are the various technical implications. The things that do bite you are organizational and support functions. When your organization starts to be under pressure and you need a lot of decisions in a very short time span, that's when things start to break, and that's where you have to have plans for how to handle and how to prioritize. Prioritizing what to fix in the right order is not so much a problem, but understanding which decisions are needed in the various stages is not obvious. Logistics is a problem. If you're a very small company, like we are, having the right person at the right spot at the right time and also spare parts and everything like that, that's something that you need to sit down and plan. How to cooperate with other organizations and do information exchange, that's something that isn't obvious if you haven't tried it, because often the ISPs work one by one and only have limited exchange with the other ISPs. Your staying power. How do you keep handling a crisis when it develops and sustains? You have to plan for your staffing. You have to send people home and say, go and rest, go out and eat, because they can't work for 24/7 hours a day without rest, without food. So you have to take that into your calculation when you do the prioritization. And also you have to find out your decision paths. When important persons in the organizations are at home resting or eating, who can step in and fill that function? Do you have an organization that can handle that? So when we tried to introduce the internet into this exercise picture, we found out that the previous exercises in 2005 and 2007 didn't have much of internet in them. They were focusing on electrical power and the traditional telecommunications. But the internet has a number of properties that doesn't really fit into that picture. One of them is that it's a fabric of many systems and players. You cannot run your own internet. It simply doesn't work. You have to have interaction with other players, and it can be very wide. It can be that systems in Sweden are dependent on systems in Spain or in Bolivia to be able to reach the resources that you want to use for the internet. So it's a very wide and intricate fabric of cooperating systems. The internet is also critically dependent on logical systems where the software plays a very important role. So this is a thing that can break and does break. And when you're in crisis, you will start to use parts of the software that aren't normally in use, and that's where the bugs are. The internet also carries communication between the service providers. When we do fault isolation and looking for errors communicating, we do that over the internet, and that wasn't really taken into account in the exercise. The internet is used by civil society for a wide variety of purposes. You have IP television, you have IP telephony in the hospital, you have the school sending email to the parents. It's all over the place. And I would like the exercise to take that more into account, so that we realize that this has a deeper impact on the society than just browsing the web. So my conclusion is that the internet was part of Telö 09, but only to a very small part, and it needs to have a more prominent role in future exercises, because this is beginning to be a very important part of our national infrastructure. Thank you.
So the Swedish internet is dependent on systems in Bolivia?
Well, I need a
We can take that question afterwards, if you give like 30 minutes of thinking.
Yes, but that can't. There we go. It can be. If someone in Sweden has a web server that it hosted under a Bolivian domain name, and a person in another part of Sweden wants to reach that server, you may have to go all the way to Bolivia to find out the DNS parts of the system to reach that server. So it can happen.
Okay. So it's still just parts of the Swedish internet, not all of Swedish internet hosted in Bolivia. No.
Absolutely not, and that's what I'm saying. It's a fabric of very many small parts, of which you may not need all at once.
Okay, that's interesting. Now Einar is going to tell us about DNSCheck and what he learned about that.
Let's see. Interesting. Slideshow, perhaps? How do you start this? Strange version. Okay, there we are. My name is Einar Lönn, and I work at the .se registry normally. But I'm also the project manager for the DNSCheck. The DNSCheck, it's a delegation checking tool. I'll go into it with more detail soon. And it's also one of the cornerstones in the health check project that Anne-Marie is going to talk about after me. So, what does DNSCheck do? It's actually quite hard to answer because DNS is not a static protocol, and also there are so many different kinds of DNS servers, DNS resolvers, that it's hard to anticipate what the test would result in. So that's why it's very hard for me to say exactly what DNSCheck does. But I can describe it like this. DNSCheck has two main functions. One of them is very basic, and that's the function that controls the delegation health of a zone. It performs this by traversing the DNS tree. So it queries the root, it queries the TLD level name servers, then it queries the name servers for the domain itself. And it compares the glue or the data received from these usually 3 instances and compares them. And not only this, it also takes, for example, host names and runs sanity checks on these host names. And also, when it finds IP addresses, of course, it will find a lot. It will also perform sanity checks on these. The second part, which isn't actually not so not so obvious, is that DNSCheck also tries to educate, to teach, and that's, for me at least, is very important because if a user uses DNSCheck, I really don't want them to be confused after running a test. I want them to be enlightened, even if it's perhaps a very difficult error that they find. They still should be able to at least get something from this test. So what makes DNSCheck special? And what I mean by this is what makes this different from other delegation checking tools that are out there, because there are a lot. One cool feature, since we at the SE registry, we have all the data from SE, what happens in the SE zone. We have delegation history from February 2007. And this means that when someone runs a check on a .se zone in DNSCheck, we actually query all old name servers to find if they are still authoritative, because that could result in problems later on. It also checks the full SE zone periodically, but this is more within the health check project than DNSCheck itself. It tries to clarify found warnings and errors, and I will show this more later on, but this is really important because this is the education part. It saves history for tests done, so if you run a test today, and if you ran a test 2 months ago, you can always compare these, which is also a very strong feature. There's an advanced tab in the graphical user interface, so you can always get more information if you want from the GUI. It's written as a modular code base, which means that the tests themselves call on different functions in different modules. So if you, for example, in the projects that you run, you could take only the DNSCheck module to test DNSCheck stuff and use only that in your project. And of course, it's fully open source under a BSD license, so you can use it basically in any way you want. And also a very strong feature is the ability to test undelegated domains. And this is also one of the really cool stuff that are quite rare in DNSCheck similar tools. I'll show that later. Build for tomorrow. When we started building this in around 2 years ago, we always had in the back of our minds that even if we start coding in an IPv4 only world, we don't want to be limited. So all the tests written from the start basically have been with the IPv6 in mind. So now when we got v6 quite recently, it was only one configurable option and everything worked. So that's very nice. And also DNSCheck, of course, since we're running DNSCheck quite a lot, so we want to test as much as possible. And actually, one of the most useful things for testing DNSSEC is the additional processing. That's basically a configurable option in a name server that says enable DNSSEC, and it's quite funny that you can actually DNSSEC sign a domain and have it on a name server without DNSSEC enabled. And that means it can actually serve DNSSEC data, but it cannot. DNSSEC doesn't work. So you can some of the records are there, but you can't do any crypto checks or something. So the zone will break. Yeah, about live tests. See if this works. It might work. Or Internet Explorer broke something. Hello? This always works. Let's see if I have Internet Explorer somewhere. Detecting proxy. La, 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 la. The net almost works here. Something's happening. Or not. Might have to do an offline demo. Yeah. Too bad. Okay. Yes. Okay, so we do it offline. The DNSCheck, the DNSCheck project really is two different parts. One part is the DNSCheck engine. That's all the code that does all the tests. It runs its CLI only, uses database and stuff to store tests. And then we have the GUI part. The GUI part is really dumb slave to the engine. So the GUI only queries the database for information. So they're connected, but still a lot apart. So basically, you could use the DNSCheck, just the GUI for your project, or you could use just the engine. So yeah, it's open source. So here, the front page when you go to dnscheck.iis.se presents a very simple interface that says here you enter your domain and here you test it, and gives some information about what DNS and DNSCheck is. In this case, we've tested iis.se, and after the test has been completed, it gives us a general overview, and the general overview says yellow warning. So this means that one or more warnings have been found in this test. Also, it gives a timestamp, and it gives what version of DNSCheck was used for this test. So when you directly below this part, you see the basic results, and this is made for normal people. This is not for the geek crowd, because this really tries to emphasize found errors, found warnings. And in this case, the green buttons have been running a lot of tests, but since no errors or no warnings were found, they have been compressed. And this is really good because it really shows that it found one problem, and there it is. And yeah, we have too few IPv6 name servers. We only have one. Also, it creates, when you run a test, it creates a unique link, so you can always go back to the unique test that you have run. And also it shows test history, where you can, as I said earlier, you can go back, way back in time to check earlier tests. And here I have clicked on the warning up there. And then it expands and gives a short description about what this warning or error means. And in this case, well, it's not good to have only one IPv6 name server, because if it goes down, if it stops answering, then you're not reachable anymore over IPv6. Not good at all. And this is the advanced view. So yeah, they are by default. It's only showing the basic view, but yeah, you just click on the advanced, and then you get the results, how they have been saved into the database. And actually, here you also see that the modular code, since the delegation is what the delegation module reports. So all these tests above is basically the control from root TLD to name servers over glue and stuff like that has to do with delegation. And then when the delegation is completed, it says done, and it leaves over to the name server modules that starts to run through the different name servers. And yeah, the name server module in itself calls upon other modules. So it's a chain of events that happens. Let's see if yeah, you see how it compares the glue. So what I mentioned undelegated tests before. So what is this? Here we have typed the domain idon'texist.se, and this domain doesn't exist. When I try to test it in the normal DNSCheck or normal DNS checking tool or trying to surf there or anything, you won't get there. The domain doesn't exist. It's that simple. Then you can't test it because testing a domain that doesn't exist would be very pointless, because with the tree hierarchy of DNS, you die instantly. So let's go to the undelegated section. And here we lie about the parent. In this case, we say that the .se, the TLD.se, has this information, and we provide that in the GUI, which means that the lies here are in the delegation module. So in this case, I say that the .se name servers, when queried, will provide information that says that I don't exist.se exists in ns.nic.se, ns2.nic.se. So that's the lying part, and then when it comes to the child level here, when it queries ns.nic.se and ns2.nic.se, it can compare this as if it was an actual test. And yeah, in this case, I hadn't pre-configured ns.nic.se and ns2 to have any information about this zone, but consider that I would want to redelegate a domain somewhere. By using this, I could actually be almost 100% sure that the redelegation will succeed, because I can try as if the data was actually alive out there with the undelegated function. So it's really a great tool to use before you delegate domains. And these tests are identical. So all the tests, even DNSCheck and stuff like that, are performed on these undelegated domains, which is kind of hard, but and yeah. Do you want to know more? You can go to these nice pages. And that's actually kind of sad. There's little known about .se's open source projects. And this opensource.is.se lists all our open source projects. So I really think you should go there and check it out. And of course, test DNSCheck. It's always fun. So dnsscheck.is.se. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Interesting. Can I use DNSCheck to check internally how my DNSs are faring?
Yeah, you can.
Can I check out my competitors' DNSs to find any vulnerabilities?
Of course you can.
That's nice.
It's public information.
Yeah.
You can check another top-level domain if you want to. Okay, I will continue. I'm back, not only from the last session, but from last year. Those who remember me remembers that I wear a white coat and a stethoscope, like a medical doctor telling you about how ill the internet of the part of the internet in Sweden was. And this time I have comfortable chairs, like now .se is with a shrink, you know. But this is not my clients, only visitors. So this will be 2009 part of the .se health check. We have repeated the annual survey of certain domains that we pick from some different criteria, like these domains are in some way important to the Swedish society. And if Einar here is the kind and friendly person telling people and educating people how they should do better, I will be the one telling you that you don't do good enough. Because we have now looked closer into 663 domains this year on a lot of different name servers, and we also created a comparison group this year with 10,000 randomly selected .se domains just to get the picture of how does it look in .se in general, not only the critical parts. The checkup will look closer into the quality and reachability in the domain name system, which is very important and which most people don't even know anything about in general. I don't think we here is representative for that kind of people because we know about this. But a domain holder in general does not have anything to do with their DNS whatsoever. They are buying the service, they are buying the domain name, or they are actually hiring a domain name from someone, and with that comes the DNS, and they don't even really know about it because it's an add-on. We have also been looking to deployment of IPv6. That is becoming somewhat important. Like if you were in this morning's keynote, you could hear Jeff Joston wanting not to talk about the war, but still couldn't avoid it. We are looking into who have open recursive name servers, which could mean that they are vulnerable for the Kaminsky bug. And we are also looking into deployment of DNSCheck. Since we are one of the TLDs that is actually running DNSCheck and have been doing that for such a long time, important details relating to email and web services, and a comparison for the first time, which really shows something because we have 3 different years to compare between. We have made our own definition of what is quality in DNS, and that is you should have a robust DNS infrastructure with high reachability and no single point of failure. It's not only one name service, but at least 2 and that kind of things. The all name service involved should answer all the queries correctly and don't lie to the parents. Domains and name service should be correctly implemented. DNS data and DNS about certain domains should be valid and updated, and the organization's DNS should be compliant to standard, which is very important. The findings this year, 2009, is out of this test group, still there are 23% of the tested domains that have serious errors, which actually does affect the reachability on the net. And as last year, and I know I will have them in my phone tomorrow, is the county councils. And also the new group, the top 30 listed companies in Sweden, OMX 30. I think they have some improvements to do. Bank and insurance, local authorities, government authorities, all of them have quite a huge amount of difficulties within the DNS. Compared to the comparison between the last 3 years tells us that we can see a slightly improvement in this test group. But then again, it's not identical test groups from year to year because that is not possible. There are some governmental agencies that will disappear, some new will enter, some local authorities will be connected or, put together or splitted. And then we actually took back the universities this year, which we put out last year because they did so well. And now we say, well, just have them there and show that it is not impossible to be good at DNS and internet. And the ISP is, of course, the service providers, and they should be the best one. IPv6 on name service. When I showed these to one of my colleagues who is running the IPv6 project, he said, nah, it's not possible. But the thing is, it's the universities that gives the positive number of the entire group. But you can see it's quite a poor deployment of IPv6, despite the fact that it's less months left to change than years it has taken to actually deploy or make the standard. Open recursive name service, you could expect this to be lower since the Kaminsky bug, because that is one very, very good thing to do, to close, to switch off the recursion of the name service, if you aren't an ISP or if you are sure of what you're doing. I've tested a randomly selected local authority in the Kaminsky bug test, which we are offering it on our website. You can actually test your own domain, and you can test your computer if you are behind a resolver that is vulnerable or not. In this case, the name servers tested are vulnerable, since the recursive name servers use randomly selected port. It might be more difficult to carry out, but the risk is still there and so on. And they have no DNSCheck activated. Good enough. Well, the same domain, if I take a closer look, there's one domain, 3 different name servers, 3 different responses. DNS1 is recursive with random port selection. DNS2 is not recursive. DNS3 is recursive and doesn't seem to have a random port selection. It is not very easy to get very much about the consequences of this, but one thing is very important. Note to self 1, if I am the domain holder of this, tell my operator of DNS1 and DNS3 that they are supposed to deliver an authoritative name service. And note to self 2, resolving an authoritative name service should be separated. And I didn't think that I should be forced to tell this, because that was what I was saying 2 years ago about. And they're still there. Open recursive name servers are 22% this year as they were last year. No more, no less, but too much, from my opinion. Then we are looking closer into email and protecting the transport of information within email servers. And we have just about 50%, 45% of the group are supporting supporting TLS. It doesn't say anything about if they're using it, but they still have servers able to support TLS. Half of the group. This has improved since last year, and I'm very pleased with that, because we were concerned of the fact that they didn't protect the transport of information through email, and we had mail servers placed outside the Swedish borders, and then we had the FRA law coming up, and you can draw your own conclusions about that. But as I said, it has improved. The explanation, I think, that the OMX 30 companies have a lot of mail servers placed outside Sweden is probably they are multinational companies with centralized information technology departments or something like that, so I'm not so surprised about that. Web servers supporting TLS SSL using web certificates. There are no more than 25% that supports for TLS that gives a reply that makes any sense about SSL. 78% out of the 25 have certificates issued by a well-known and accepted certification authority, which was what we were recommending last year. You should get your certificates from someone well-known, where your browser will be able to support you with this decision to whether you should go further or not. You know, you have always an option to override the warning that you shouldn't go any further, but most of the time you just don't care, do you? Because you really want to go to that website anyway. What is very surprising and very scaring, I should say, is more than 20 certificates that we taking a close look at had expired. One of them 5 years ago in July. Why on earth do you have a certificate that is not valid anymore and haven't been for like a half decade? I have no idea. Many users of weak hash algorithm MD5, even though I was part of a work, I think it's about 10 years now, when we recommended you should go from MD5 hash algorithm and start use SHA1, 10 years ago. And still, there are people using MD5. There are a lot of certificates having a far too short RSA key. Very few uses the possibility to have extended validation, and about 40 of them uses wildcard certificates or certificates that is not related to the domain at all, so you will get a warning even though it is a good certificate. And not to mention all of those certificates that is able to use as a certificate authority itself. So you can. I have also used, like in the former session, the our famous bank Nordea in Sweden. This is how it looks like when you're trying to get into your account, and you have the green sign, you have a sign that shows you, well, there is some valid certificate on this website which is issued for the Nordea Bank company, and you should be able to trust this. And those of you who attended the last session, the session before this, you know that even if there is a lock in the bottom of this sign, you don't know for sure, do you? Another problem is if the Nordea decide to issue a certificate that is not for the company or the domain, like www.nb.se, well, this isn't a trustworthy connection. And one of the test sites of SSL certificates that you may use by your own is saying that the SSL certificate we found this site is not meant for nb.se. Probably this is another site on the same server. We advise you not to submit any confidential or personal data to this website because a secure connection could not be established. Okay, so what do you think if the Swedish users get all these warnings from time to time when all they want to do is e-shop, email, or banking, or whatever else that actually requires that you add some sensible information to a website, and you are not sure if you can trust it. Those of you who are speaking Swedish say, take me away from here, it says in the middle, and of course it's scary. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but you don't know, do you? And most of the Swedes, I know, they overrule this and say, okay. Comparing with the SS zone in general, the 10,000 randomly selected says that no, IPv6 is not that deployed yet. It's only 1% when we are looking in it in general. SPF, which is a technique for protecting mail, is used by 26% of our testing group, which is very good, but only 9% in .se in general. Recursive name service is more common in the testing group than it is in general. And using DNSCheck, well, I don't know what I should do with that part. We were hoping for more, I can tell, because of all things that have happened last years with attacking DNS and other things. Protecting your email with TLS is more common in the test group than it is in general. But still, I should not only tell how bad you behave or how bad we are doing this, because there are good examples too. We have the local authorities, the central organization, the Association for Swedish Municipalities and County Councils. They have put up a recommendation for improvement of the information security that all the municipalities should follow. And they are starting with analyze the DNS with DNSCheck. It's a free tool, you can use it whenever you like, it doesn't take any much resources from you. Check also the DNS service behind the firewall, so you can download DNSCheck and use it within your environment. Check the start of authority expiry, it should be at least 1 week. Check for Kaminsky vulnerability, also a free tool, just use it, and deploy DNSSEC. And that is the checklist that they have handed out to all the Swedish municipalities, and that is the reason why we see they are improving. The good example number 2 is the Swedish banks. They are working very hard with securing email. And they have agreed upon a common email policy that says that you should protect your email with TLS, Star TLS or SSL certificates if you are a Swedish bank. And the number 1 part of it is a valid sender of email. The case 1 is if the bank sends email to customers, the customer should be able to validate that it is from the bank. The bank uses external distribution service for email to customers, the same thing. They should be able to validate Case 3, if the bank uses external distribution to send email to the bank's own staff, if they're doing, like employee satisfaction surveys and other things, well, you should know that it's from your employer, because if anyone, social engineer person is able to send this to the bank and put up a lot of intricate questions about the bank and the bank business, well, you might have a problem. And then number 2 recommendation, secure email communication between banks, which is important as well. It's written generally on a high policy level language, but still it mentions that banks should introduce techniques to secure email. And I think other categories or other branches in the Swedish Internet Society should follow the good examples. That's it for this year, and the report will be translated in English, and it is available in Swedish on the iis.se website. And it should be in this room, actually. Now I remember. I will bring it here, and I will put it in the end of the room, so you can pick it up when you leave later. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You said you don't know what to do about these open resolvers. Maybe you should tell the press about it.
Well, they're here, aren't they?
Yes, some of them are here. And if you tell me who has the certificate that when it's 5 years old, I think I can make somebody deal with that problem.
I will tell them, not you.
That's called, what's it called?
I'm not that bad.
Responsible disclosure. Not after 5 years, come on. Have you listened to Swedish humor radio? This winter there was this sketch about, there was somebody found out that Försäkringskassan, the social security services, used the same telecenter somewhere in the Baltics that also had a telephone pornography site. And the sketch goes like something like this: there is a man dialing up, and there's a woman answering and saying, "Hello, it's sexy Sasha, telephone 6. Do you want to know what I'm wearing?" And he says, "No, I just want to call in sick." And she says, "Oh, sorry, I thought it was the sex line, sorry. What is your name? What is your social security number? What is your bank account number? And how ill are you?" Sometimes people who make humor programs just don't know how close to the truth they are. And why should we build a more secure internet when that's the sort of users we have? Does anyone have humor to answer that question? Amel just ran away. I understand why.
Sorry, could you repeat?
Why should we build a more secure internet when we still have users that does just about anything out of random?
Okay. Actually, I think I tried to make a point with DNSCheck there, because I think the greatest problem of all is education, of course. And if people would understand the technology they use, it wouldn't be a problem. So I really think that the focus should be small measures to educate the greater public. And I think really small measures are needed, because you can't just give them a PC handbook on 200 pages, but small steps like, for example, a even lighter version of DNSCheck on a popular like aftonbladet.se or something that could at least make the users aware of the problem, that there exists a problem. I think that would help a lot, actually.
Okay, so media was it was the only one that had more open resolvers this year than the year before.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, they should be excellent to teach everybody else how to do it. But and also one technical questions. You had SOA.
Yeah.
Was that service-oriented architecture?
No.
Or was it start of authority?
Start of authority.
Okay. What? SOA. Now I guess all of you have enormous amount of very intelligent questions. So to just stop me from babbling around all the time here, just raise your hand and please come down to the microphone when you have something you want to ask. Otherwise, there's just no stopping me.
I picked up the report, and there will be one box there and one box there, so please help yourself and get an...
So please, name and the question.
The amount of open recursive name servers you mentioned in the study was around 22%, right? Was that on the amount or 22% of the authoritative name servers for SE domains, or was it on the total amount of name servers you observed?
On the amount of name servers we observed, but that would be mostly authoritative name servers. So still there are some of those name servers that are both recursive and authoritative, which is a problem.
I think we did a scan of all .fi authoritative name servers, and we were last time down to 8%. But I think we did some couple of email runs to all the domain holders in the mid-team. I might be wrong on the figures, but I think it was down to 8.
Okay, so you mailed your customers and recommend them to turn off recursion?
Yeah, I made some publicity on this.
That will be the next step, probably.
I didn't catch your name, sir. Can you say your name in the microphone so we know?
Kartokopia Finnish Communications Regulatory Authority.
Okay, thank you. One question I had was like, how come it's the same amount? During 1 year, at least some of those machines should have stopped being and been replaced by new machines, and the new machines should by default be more safe. How come that hasn't happened?
Well, that's not sure. You can have changed your name service provider. You can have made a lot of things. Other domains, partly, as I told from the beginning. And no, I'm not sure that. Of course, this is a snapshot. This is a test ran one time, one moment of the internet still. So I'm surprised as well that the number hadn't lowered more.
Maybe we should build a new internet instead.
No need for that. The old one works fine.
I tell all my friends, you must have backup. You must have backup. Why don't we have a backup internet?
Actually, we are building it. It's called IP version 6.
Yeah. Now we're getting someplace. Let's build a new internet based on some new technology that actually works. Bring in some people that actually know what they are doing, and keep all the spammers and scammers and virus writers out. Problem solved, right?
That's what we did in 1993.
You did, and I was not allowed. I wasn't invited.
There's no challenges in a virus-free, bug-free environment of internet. You know, all of us are very excited of tampering with things and trying to find solutions on different kind of problems. That's life. You know?
Nice people, nice companies often have a sort of separate physical network for the administrators. When something bad happens, they still have a little internal net that does work.
Oh yeah.
Why can't we have a separate internet for important people in Sweden?
Anyone here from the hospital in Malmö who had this very closed, not updated, patched Windows network for health environment, and somebody put in a USB stick and off they go?
And now it's owned by Configure?
Yeah. It was. So now you're not safe just because you try to keep things out. There will always be a way to get in.
I think you have to approach it from a different angle. The networks are there because people want to communicate. And isolating a network means not communicating with the rest. And that is, people are not going to adhere to that border. They will communicate in some way, and the USB stick is just one way of doing it. So there will be communication across the border, and that makes it again part of the big internet, because that's the value of the network is in its size and the fact that you can reach everyone else. So what you will have to do, I think, is to stop trying to protect people. If you walk into that blow 5 times, say, oops, this is dangerous, I have to beware. But if you walk into this and someone catches and says, no, don't go there, don't go there. You'll never figure out that it's actually dangerous. As long as the technical community tries to maintain, to protect people and say, oh, it's all safe, it's all fine, they're going to believe it, and we're never going to get a common understanding of that there are actually problems out there that you need to deal with yourself.
Okay, it's like 6 billion people on the planet, 20 different protocols, and the last idiot is not born yet. I think we got our work cut out for us if we're going to do that. Anne-Marie, you want to say something?
Yeah, well, I'm not really as much into that Darwinistic approach. I still think that we have to do the best from the technical point of view to let people do the right thing and make it hard to do it wrong. But we can't protect them from everything. I agree on that.
I would like to continue to spin on that, actually, which is if you look at the internet of today, we can say it's roughly in the mind of a person, the average person. The internet has been around for 15 years. It's been around longer, we know that, but in the mind of the average person, it's been around for 15 years. Now, if you took a car in the year of 1910, how difficult was it to ride? Well, you had to bring your own tool chest, and you have to have all the spare parts, and you had to fix the car yourself, and you would almost have to brew your own petrol to drive it with. Now the car has been around for more than 100 years. It's well standardized, we understand the problems, we understand the security issues and everything. And when the internet is 100 years old, people will understand what the problems are, because it takes half a generation to get this into people's mind. Our kids will have much less problems to deal with that than we do. We just haven't learned yet. They grow up with it, so it gets into their genes at an early age.
I think cars kill about 800 people in Sweden every year, so I'm not going to learn from them. I think we have a new question from a Finnish guy here.
Actually, I'm just to stand corrected here. Actually, it is we last tested the whole Finnish name server space, authority name server space for open recursion in February, and it was about 20%. But it was down from 25% last year. Last summer, and we had poor randomness for the Kaminsky bug around 8% of the whole name server space. So around 8% of the whole total authoritative name server space had probable candidates for using against Kaminsky bug.
Okay.
So that was.
Thank you.
Now we have a question from John Wilander here.
Yeah, John Wilander. For those of you who were here the last session, you know I'm interested in SSL or TLS. So I have two questions for you. The first thing is that SSL is a bundle of both authentication and transport encryption. And for all of us who are just interested in protecting sensitive data going over the network, maybe we only need encryption and not also authentication, which means that an old certificate works just fine. So that's a question for you. Do you think there's some merit to that kind of thinking? And the second one is regarding the business model of TLS. I guess VeriSign, Thought, and other such corporations have made a lot of money on selling us these certificates and making us feel secure. They were going out of business because people finally bought these certificates, and when they have them, they're pretty safe. So they had to invent these extended validation certificates and do it all over again and sell us new, more expensive certificates. And from my point of view, I would say VeriSign and Thought, they're not even interested in security. They're just interested in earning money. So shouldn't we have a Swedish authority, for instance, .se, that takes over the CA role and just publishes certificates on a basis of not earning money, just sufficiently to make it run?
Or we should have a competition. VeriSign gets half of Sweden, or half of these perpetrators that doesn't update, and you can see how much can they sell people better security, and you get the other half, and you can get a whip and try to whip them into shape.
Well, It's an interesting thought that .se might be able to provide the Swedish community with certificates, for instance, web services, and I make a note of that. And when it comes to SSL certificates, I know there are different uses of it, and I think still you can have an old-fashioned SSL certificate if you have internal services, it doesn't matter, but we are looking into public services from public sector, which is e-government, all this, yada yada, the politicals talking a lot about e-government, and you should be providing us with all the information and we will give you the service back. But you have to be able to trust those organizations with that sensitive information, and that's the point we are trying to make. Not when you're having it for internal services or other things that might go with any free issued certificate like, CI and everything else that is available but isn't in the web browsers, which is a problem, of course.
Is VeriSign not in the web browser? Is VeriSign not in the web browser?
Yes, they are, but CR cert is not, for instance,
Sorry.
which is a freely issued certificate, which works for some uses.
Okay. Lars-Johan?
I just wanted to comment that .se is already a certificate authority because they issue DNSCheck signatures. So you're already there.
Okay, yeah.
A matter of time.
But you were mentioned one interesting kind of project that is going on, and that is having the DNS carrying other security attributes when it's signed, because then you have a really, really smart distribution channel. But we are there, partly. There are some protocols that allows you to transport security attributes, but I don't think SSL is one of them yet.
There are SSH does,
yeah.
at least in some versions, I guess, but not SSL, no.
So question for Eva then. If you could set up an exercise to deal with these problems, how would you do it?
I have no microphone.
No.
I really don't know, because it's very I think it's very important to do a realistic exercise. You have to have events that are realistic, that it can happen. And most internet-related problems, I think, the internet actors really solve very quick. So if you have an exercise on, for example, 2 days, you have to find out some problem that can happen, really happen, and that take the internet actors to give them a problem to solve. And I think it's very difficult to find these issues. So I can't answer you, but it's a good question.
Maybe we could just send an email saying this botnet attack on base farm was actually an exercise. Now we should see what you do about it.
If I may add, there are on the Kaminsky bug site a movie you can look closer into that shows you how this vulnerability is used to change the weather forecast for Gothenburg and Sweden, just as a very realistic example. So it's possible to show more easier actually than real crisis with people dying and car crashes and everything. You can do a lot realistic experiments on the internet without harming anyone or anything.
Yes, I don't know if you hear me, but I think it's, yes, it's easy to find example that harm the internet, but to have it in an exercise, it could be difficult, but because the internet, how can you play with it in the exercise? How can you do it? And the internet service provider and other, like NetNode and so on, I think they are solving the problem really quick.
Any more questions from the general audience? So they want to have exercise where they can play with problems they can solve. Why don't they just solve them before somebody tells them to exercise? Is there no, don't they have any urge themselves to make their services more secure? Lars-Johan?
I think you must look at the security on the internet is mostly something that pertains to the users and not to the ISPs. The ISP's main focus is to transport packets and do as little with them as possible. The security issue that I see that the ISPs have to deal with is overload attacks, where a certain group of users are being attacked by massive amounts of packets. That's where an ISP comes into play. But when you deal with the content of the packets, it's actually between user and user. So the security measures must be taken at the user side and not with the ISP. Because you have to remember that the internet is a stupid network with intelligent terminals, intelligent computers sitting around it, as opposed to the telephony network, which has very stupid terminals, but a rather intelligent center. So that's the way I view it. I see Mike stepping.
That was a good thing, because now we have two intelligent people who wanted to ask questions. Yes. Jacob Applebaum first.
I wanted to paraphrase Matt Blaze when talking about SSL. He says, a commercial certificate authority protects you from anyone whose money they refuse to take. And I think it's really important that, for example, .se or another non-profit-like organization steps up to give a very serious, basically service to the internet, as well as maybe promoting a standard. So with DNSCheck, you've clearly done the right thing. And DNSCheck means that you can put things into DNS in a way where we can now trust them, and that's bootstrapping trust. And from that, we can, with SSH fingerprint records, know that we are SSHing in to the right host, and we can check that and we can verify it. If we had a standard like that for SSL that was supported, and we had someone that would issue those certificates and make sure that it was done in a correct way, that would be quite a step forward, and we could stop trusting commercial certificate authorities, and we could verify it in a very good and positive way. And I think you guys should lead the way with that, because you're leading the way with DNSSEC. No one else has the infrastructure to do that. So, just a thought.
So
that's okay. Anybody against? No?
Well,
let's do it.
Yes.
Are you against?
I'm not, but I know someone who is.
Okay, let's hear to this gentleman first. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Abrahamson. So with the Telö 09, I was part of that as being on the board of NetNode. I would say one of the practice is for the management groups to empower the engineers actually doing the technical work, so that they are able to find any kind of creative solution to the technical problems. I mean, when we have a force majeure situation which nobody thought about, or it's not usually something you plan for, because it's such a disaster that it is like someone is atom bombing Stockholm. We have bigger problems, so let's not try to solve that situation. But even when you have that situation, you need to use people's creativity. We have a lot of skilled engineers who needs free hands to solve the situation. So the question there is, did the exercise handle that part as well? So that basically, everybody helps everybody, and in disregard basically for who you work for, and we just say, okay, let's get this mess solved as well as we can. I heard there was a lot about this after 9/11, and the people tried to solve the situation there. Nobody cared about money or anything. They just wanted everything up and working again, because this was a joint problem. So, because that's I think one important issue to look at as well.
So your question is, was Telö based on the assumption that everybody will try to solve the same problem regardless of employer?
Well, more like the actual, did the engineers and so on feel that they had free hands to try to come up with any solution and talk to others that they might not normally be able to get help from, because this was such a disaster, terrorist attacks and so on, that the old rules do not apply anymore. It's like two competitors would not help each other normally, but when you have this kind of disaster, then you need to work together to fix the problems, and it doesn't matter if the resources needed is here in their care or in the other entity's care, you just try to work together.
Eva?
Yes, the aim for the exercise was to strengthen the ability in the sector, and it was also a crisis management exercise, and to show how the collaboration between the different actors really work. So the scenario was developed to stress this collaboration, and I think that some of the participants took contact with each other and tried to collaborate and solve the problem together. But it also, that is an experience from the exercise that the participant operators can work more with, I think. And I think they have got something to think about after the exercise. So the aim for the exercise is to collaborate.
On all levels. So what I'm saying is,
yes, but I don't know on all level, because that is something we are discussing. On what level shall we, or is it possible to collaborate? Is it between the is it a high level on in the company, or it's on the engineer level and so on? I don't know what is the best, and I think it's the company in the sector have to see at that and look at that.
Yeah, but it's like, I know engineers in similar positions at other ISPs. If our bosses, both companies say, just fix the problem, we don't care whose resources you use, we have free hands and we can fix it, and I don't care if the roll of cable or the line card or something that I need is theirs or ours. We just, let's get this fixed. But if there is not that empowerment from management, then your hands are tied to whatever resources you have in your company or you can procure from your vendors. So you don't have the. So I think that I don't know if this actually is a problem or if it has been discussed or something. But I am not sure that in this case I would naturally feel that my management would just give me free hands.
Lars-Johan?
Yeah, I agree with you fully that it's something that's very desirable. I think it's something that's very hard to mandate from a central position. It has to be something that's built within each ISP, each organization, but I absolutely agree with you that it should be discussed, and I hope that is a consensus they can reach and work for.
Yeah, so what I would like to see is, if it hasn't been done already, that the management of all ISPs and so on also discuss this and say, if there is a situation like this, we decide in advance, hopefully, that we will pool our resources and just fix it. For this kind of, bombing attack or something that is not normal operations. When there's national security and everything, and this kind of disaster terrorist attacks, we need to work together. And that's just, whenever something happens, we just communicate that to everybody and let's go, let's fix it. And I'm not sure that would happen today.
I'm a little bit thin in my political knowledge, but I think there's something called national disaster or something. And if the authorities declare something to be a disaster, I think very few companies afterwards could act as a company. They just act.
No, it's not correct.
It's not like that. Okay, please tell me how it is.
No.
I want to know. What happens?
I'm not sure we should make this a political issue either.
No.
I mean,
you can't. In Sweden, it's not the only time that other laws are going to be in effect is when there is a war situation. The laws is in normal or a very affected situation in Sweden in peacetime. The regular laws is yellow.
Okay, so there's no button though the political compression says now everybody should pool their resources.
No, only if it's war.
So we should start a war next time something be bad. It's also a very bad idea. Daniel?
I'm from Holland, and every year, beginning of December, our Dutch Santa Claus comes to us and visits us. And we've been doing this health check now for the last 3 years, and we say, oh, it's not getting better. Should we pay them a visit next year at Internet Days and have a flower on their homepage saying that you got a friendly visitor coming, and by the way, you're vulnerable?
I think we should start with following the Finnish example by sending the domain holder and the name service provider an email telling them that you have a problem that you should solve until next year, because otherwise we will show the entire list of those who don't manage well.
That's blackmailing.
Or blacklisting.
Blacklisting, blackmailing, or Telö press, it's about the same thing. But Danny's into something important, because I looked up what we were talking about 1 year from now, 1 year before. It was the DNS bug, it was security in the cloud, and it was open resolvers. So why aren't we getting anywhere?
I think it is most of all explainable by the fact that we are human. We tend to forget, because worrying is a pain in itself, and you can't go around worrying about things all the time, because it will make your life really, really poor. And I think when people remind you, when they do from time to time, when something bad happens, then you realize, okay, I should fix that. It is on my list. I will do it, but I will probably do it tomorrow or next week. And next week, something else turned up and you forgot. I think it's as easy, because it doesn't kill anyone. It doesn't harm you in a way that you notice. So it's like everything else you don't do that you should do, which is on your list.
But human nature has been known for like 2,000 years. So if we can't solve it, should we just care about something else?
I think other people caring about other things. We should care about the internet. That's our mission.
But Predrag had this statement earlier that you can't say it's the user's fault, because the user are the user and the user's behavior is known. And the internet should be there for the users, for the people. So maybe we should build another type of internet.
Which would be?
Easier DNS servers.
Easier than asking your name service provider to put up a service with quality? You buy it. You buy the service. You have to be a good consumer, putting up the requirements needed. And we have tried to make that easy for you by doing a best common practice for DNS with quality. Just bring the list to your name service provider, say, this is what I want, and if I run DNSCheck, I would like to have a green sign. If not, I won't pay my bill.
Okay, so we have done all this for the DNS operators. Please don't run away, sir. I'm going to let you talk very soon. We have done all this for the DNS operators to make it easier for them, to make it easier for the ordinary users and safer, and they haven't done anything. And after 3 years, we're still not getting anywhere. So maybe you are thinking about sending them emails, dead horse heads in the bed of 2 years from now, and a visit from the press 3 years from now or something. Is that how you're going?
You tell me. What should we do? What is your opinion? What should we do to improve? The fact is that we are delegating the responsibility to the domain holder to take care of their domains. We don't want to be police force of the internet of Sweden. We want to be a top-level domain manager that does the right things and runs it as good as we can with all the resources it takes to make it stable, reliable, and safe, and you should do the same.
Okay. Please, sir.
While you were asking for the open recursors, did you ask did you do a test of any cached information, like, for example, those that were closed name servers that weren't open recursors? Did they answer for information that they had in their own name server cache, like the root zone information? Because that can be used for denial of service attack.
Do you mean in the DNSCheck or Kaminsky bug or?
In your yearly survey, did you test for the name servers to be answering information outside of their own authoritative zone from the cache, like the root zone information?
No. It's the DNSCheck's function to check if a name server is recursive or not is to use the example.com domain, since no name server should have information about that, and it queries a random string .example.com, and if it answers that it is NX domain, then it flags it as recursive. It's actually a problem because we have seen a few instances where a name server, when it does not have the information in cache, as you say, it will answer as if it wasn't recursive. But if you ask the same question again, it has cached the information and it answers as if it was recursive. So finding if a name server is recursive, that simple task is actually not so simple. So the thing here is that DNSCheck, as I think, as we built it, I think it does a very good control if a name server is recursive. But the Kaminsky bug site does another way of checking. So the Kaminsky bug in this instance would report that the name server is recursive, although DNSCheck would say it isn't. So it's not so easy.
It is not just the question of recursiveness, but if name servers return answers for some queries that can be easily used for denial of service attacks, like DNS amplification, like a root zone information, because it's a very small query and you get quite a bit of data out of that. Yeah,
but this is a sounds more like a feature in the authoritative name server more than a check if it's recursive or not, because old binds would always give you the root zone if you queried for something that they didn't know about. So in that case, you could use an amplification attack, although it wasn't recursive. So it's hard to answer, but we don't check it. No.
I have one comment actually on what we might be able to do, and that would be following up the survey, which is only performed automatically, getting queries and answers from the DNS public information, with a survey to the people behind the organizations that are holding the domain, and just to make sure that they are aware of the problems that they might have and what to do about it. So that might be involving the human part of it.
Okay, now you took my last question here. We're 1 minute late, and we can't be more than 5 minutes late, so I want all of you to answer from the left to the right. 30 seconds. What is the big thing we will talk about when we meet here in 1 year? Eva first. I don't know. Lars Johan?
I think we'll be talking about some kind of security breach that's used to access information, not in a single break-in, but something like the Kaminsky bug, which is actually a problem with the structured design of a protocol. This time it happened to be the DNS. Maybe next time it's the web or some other security-related protocol.
So we are not safe next year either. Einar, 30 seconds. What will you be thinking about next year?
Since I'm snowed in on the DNSCheck, I think it would be actually interesting to compare the policies, the rules for what kinds of error, what kind of level a certain error is. For example, is it Is it just information? Is this a warning, or is it an error? Because this will change a lot in 1 year. For example, next year, perhaps if you don't have IPv6 at all, perhaps that's an error in 1 year. So that will be really interesting to compare.
So IPv6 could be a security problem next year. That's interesting. Eva, how you found out a new, better answer? Don't you want to say?
Yes,
Yes.
I think the next we are talking about the. Oh, sorry. We are talking about that .se is issuing a server certificate. I think we are talking about.
Okay, that's we're going to remember that one for next year.
1 year from
We're
now,
going to call her in. We're going to have a reality check on that one.
And I believe that we are still celebrating the fact that the route is signed.
Okay, that's good. Now our time is definitely up. These people have graciously said they can stay like 2 or 3 minutes in case some of you find this interesting question right now and you hadn't had the time to ask it before. So they will stay a couple of minutes. I want to thank them. I want to thank you for coming here. And I hope that we all see you next year. Thank you very much.